before I started focus on growing my relationship with God, um, I was just focused on like the earthly things.
Mm.
What would so and so think? How can I please so and so?
Mhm.
And then I turned my focus on building my relationship closer to God and made it more so not what so think, what would God think?
Mm.
And that's another reason why it kind of helped me, get through lust and temptation. And I was never really a big like drinker or nothing like that, but I would socially drink. I would
Mhm.
smoke weed every now and then.
Mhm.
But then I stopped all that, and because I changed my mindset of what would God think if he was physically right here, I
Mhm.
could see him and sitting next to me, what would he think?
Turn on the lamp, I don't go postal till God give his stamp. We going global, I'm in with the champs. I sit at the Oval, they told me I can't, Turn on the lamp, I don't go postal till God give his stamp. We going global, I'm in with the champs. I sit at the Oval, they told me I can't, I'm feeling like Oprah, cause you get a chance and you get a chance.
Welcome to Turn on the Lamp podcast. We're going to kick off our Manhood series and ask the question, what does it mean to be a man of God? And I'm so excited to kick off this series with my brother Garrett Owen, all the way from Mesquite, Texas, which is only like down the road, you know what I mean? But I want to welcome him, and I appreciate you for coming on the show, man.
Appreciate you, bro.
Yeah,
Loving
for sure. So let's start it off. Who's your biggest role model in your life and why?
Simple answer would be simple is Jesus Christ.
Mhm.
Just because, I done been through some things in life. Not trying to throw a pity party, but shoot, I wouldn't have got through it if it wasn't for him.
Mhm.
But as far as the earthly man or woman, I would have to say my dad, hands down. We done been through some things as well that some people don't really know about, whether it's struggling, whether it was, getting along, and that just made us strong. And knowing how he grew up, it made me it was an eye-opener for me because I know how much more appreciative I am of him, that he made sure I didn't go through and my sister and brother didn't go through as kids that he went through as kids.
Right.
And so he really made me
Yeah.
the better man I am today.
So with your dad being a welder, he installed that blue collar work ethic into you, right? So what were the biggest principles that he instilled in you at a young age?
Just hard work and to never give up, no matter what, no matter how hard the circumstances may be. Cause life ain't easy. I mean, everybody knows that.
Right.
I would hope. Handouts aren't just a given. So he just told me, no matter what you're going through, whatever you set your mind to, whatever you start, finish it. Don't just never give up. And that's the one. It's a simple quote, but it got a deep meaning for me. Just never give up. And I seen him working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, out of town, missing games, birthdays, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I just appreciative of that.
Wow.
That hard work mentality.
Dad, man.
Yeah,
Shout out to him. So I want to start this off with a quote, G. It says, manhood is not defined by strength alone, but by the capacity to embrace vulnerability, to act with integrity, and to lead with compassion. I want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I agree. Because especially these days, with the way the world has been going, when you think of a man, a lot of people probably just think, oh, he big, bad, mighty.
Yeah.
Physically.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, like on the inside is what's really important. Anybody can get swole like you and big and bad.
Yeah.
Which is good. It's a good thing. But, I feel like a lot of men these days really need help on the inside with their mental health.
Absolutely.
And things like that. So being able to lead with integrity, help out other men, I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. And there's as a man, there's a different level of pressure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like you said, it's like we think like being a man is having that hard working exterior, right? But as you know, it's a struggle, and it's not really highlighted in our young ages to open up and be vulnerable, right?
Right.
So what is that process of like becoming more vulnerable? How has that changed you for the better?
It changed me a lot because I used to be that person no matter, me and your brother Brendan, we was roommates in college, having an apartment together, and it'd be times to where we never physically got into it, but I remember one time vividly Because that's kind of when I started going through my depression and stuff. We kind of got into it, and then he was just like, "Bro, what's wrong, man?" Like, because I kind of like exploded, letting him know, like, you don't know what I've been going through, blah blah blah. And so finally, I kind of opened up a little bit to him then. But going through that just made me realize that, like, if you keep a lot of stuff bottled up, you're gonna explode.
Right. Yeah.
So being able to have somebody that you could just like open up to has helped me a lot. So going through a authentic manhood series at my church and stuff with some guys, going through that. I'm going through it the second time right now. The first time I was going through a divorce, and now this time I'm going into a new relationship.
Wow. Yeah.
So it just gave me outlooks in both scenarios, and I mean it's being able to open up, because you never know who went through something that you're
exactly.
currently going through. So that's big.
Yeah, and I think it requires like a different level of humility, right? Like as a man, we have egos, we have pride, right? That's just something that naturally men have, but it's a humility of saying like, okay, I need help, but also I'm willing to submit to somebody else who may have been through that particular thing, right? So how did you first incorporate and find that group of that crowd that you trusted? And I know you mentioned through your church, like having a men's group, but was that something that you initiated in finding, or did it kind of come to you?
Well, it's kind of like the church. Every year they start new groups for it.
Okay.
And so it was multiple men. I was already getting close with some men at church, and then it was multiple men who just came up to me and was like, "Hey, join my group. Join my group." So really, I just I knocked it off, got close with one guy, joined his group. Man, it just went up from there, skyrocketed. I started opening up to him when we weren't even in the group.
Wow.
Like we would meet, and then me and him would have like lunch or something together, and we'd open up then. And then, like I said, that group, we had men from all different ages, all different backgrounds, races, and man, it just being able to get that feeling of finding other men that you trust. It's big.
And you also use your voice in another way through your music, right?
Yeah.
Where did that passion for music come from? And then also, how has that allowed you to use your voice to speak out and kind of like you said, just openly express your views and ideas?
Yeah, so honestly, I like that. Not many people ask me like really what got me to express my ideas in my music like that, but that's a good question. But as a kid, I was always into music. I mean, I'm sure you remember growing up, I was a big Wayne head. And so when I first started music, I wouldn't rap about things that I didn't go through or nothing like that, but I would like cuss, it'd be vulgar and all that. And I was like, one day I just realized, man, I want to do something different. What is something, because everybody's a rapper these days. So what is a way I can try and make myself stand out? And so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna just make clean music, no cussing, no profanity, none of that. So I started doing that, and in the process, I was going through my depression and stuff, and I felt like I didn't have an outlet. At that time, I wasn't seeing no counselor. I wasn't opening up to nobody about what I was going through. So that my outlet turned out to be my music. And then the best part of it is not being able to get that weight lifted off my shoulders, but people who hear my music coming up to me being like, man, like, I didn't know you were going through that. Like, that's really helping me to realize that, you were able to put that mask on, which isn't good for the most part, but you're able to put that mask on and still help me and other people without even knowing it. Just by venting throughout your own music.
So when you were doing your music, like you said, that was the long where you going through that season of hardship, right? What would your encouragement be for other men, young men that are going through seasons where they're like, man, I don't see any hope in the future for me? What would your encouragement be to them, and how did that help you in that season?
Yeah, so that was me. I didn't know what direction I was gonna go. And honestly, it's way easier said than done. People may think, oh, everybody say that, but honestly, bro, just pray. Get a relationship with God. I always had a relationship with God, but I was never trying to grow that relationship with him.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, man, just like putting the work in to grow that relationship with God helped out a whole lot.
Yeah.
Like I say, it's easier said than done, but you'll realize once, and you ain't gonna feel better right away. You're not just gonna pray one night before going to bed, wake up the next morning, everything's gone. You're still gonna go through trials and tribulations, but if you have that as a main core value in your life, everything will just turn around.
And how did having Jesus as your foundation start to change the way you dealt with certain situations, certain obstacles? Like you said, we all are going to go through adversity. But before you were really serious on your walk with Christ versus how you're doing it now, what's different about that?
Praying more, being more deep in it, praying more often, being more deep. Now, I'm not saying no, 2-hour prayers or nothing like that. But now I would just like pray asking God to fix this, fix that. But if he fixes it, it may not be for the better. So now I would switch it up and be like, God, just do it your way. Right. I don't know how to get out of this funk that I'm going through. So I'm gonna just give it all to you. You do it your way. I trust and believe that you'll fix it for the better for me eventually. And so like I said, it's easier said than done, but just trusting, just having that faith.
Yeah. You allowing God to cultivate something inside of you on a personal level. And like you said, when you branch out to these men's group, initially, you were invited into one of those groups, but now you mentioned that you're leading those groups, right? So what have you been able to see? Is it kind of like a full circle moment to step back and like, man, I was once in their shoes once.
Exactly. So like when I was going through my first time through the men's group or whatever, I was never like, I went through, a deep depression and all that, but I always tell people I've always been too hard-headed, too stubborn. I feel like no matter what I was going through, I always believed that God put me here on a reason, so I would never like hurt myself or take myself out or nothing like that. But I know it's men out there who feel that way.
Right.
And so completing my first go-around through Authentic Manhood, it was this guy who ended up coming to my church, and he wasn't in our group or nothing like that. But a pastor from our church texted a group and was like, "Hey, I met this guy today. He's not doing too well. He's coming to young adults tonight." And immediately I texted that pastor and was like, "Give him my information." Like, I didn't even have to think about it.
Right.
I was just like, "Give him my information," and then he gave him my information, and then we chopped it up at young adults that night, and I prayed for him. He opened up a little bit to me. I shared my testimony with him, and then that next morning he texted me and was like, "Thank you, because I didn't know how I was gonna make it through last night, but because of you, I was able to make it through." And so, how that became full circle for me was because if I didn't open up, it ain't no telling what would have happened to him. And I used to be the one that wouldn't open up, like I said. So being able to take that risk of trusting other men with my testimony. Yeah.
So what advice would you give young men in society? We have a lot of different things trying to pull our attention away from God, whether it's the music. Like you said, you had an awareness of like, man, I need to make my music more clean, right?
Yeah.
But some people haven't made that shift, right? But there's a lot of different things that try to pull us away and try to manipulate who God intended us to be as men. So what would your advice be to them?
You got to find something that you love. But how can you build your relationship with God through whatever you love? With me, it was music. And so I just, like, making like secular and profanity, I seen what that was putting in my head. And I also like to impact the youth. So, I see how it impacts the youth. And so that was another reason why I was like, you know what, let me change it up a little bit and not only better it for myself with what I'm writing down, with with the words that's coming out of my mouth, but I can also impact the generation coming up after me. So
I love where you said that, realizing that you have an impact in whatever you do, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of men, I actually know a lot of men, just as a man, we struggle naturally with lust and temptation, right? And a lot of men, they think like, I'm just going, I'm cool, like, it ain't gonna bother me, right? And we kind of get closer and closer to that line. then eventually it's like, man, I fell into this. You know what I mean? How important is it to establish those boundaries? Because the scripture says, flee from lust. Like, have nothing to do with it. Don't even look at it. You know what I mean? So how important is it to create those boundaries for yourself?
It's very important because I feel like with lust, I'm not saying men deal with lust more than women, but I wouldn't argue that.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, lust is definitely, it's very tempting. I mean, one way, because I used to struggle with it a lot and stuff. Whether I was in a relationship or not, if I seen a pretty woman, I might be with my friends. I'd be like, dang, she looks good. But now I'm big on your words turning into your actions. So as far as lust, like if me and you are out and I see a pretty woman and I'm in a relationship, I'm not even gonna say nothing to you. I'm not gonna be like, hey, look over there. So I just gotta, keep it in and just pray about it.
And I think it's important, like you said, like not even bringing it up around those fans, but also that kind of goes with the importance of surrounding yourself with the right people.
Yeah.
If you're around a bunch of dudes that, falling into that constantly, it's like, okay, like one bad apple gonna spoil the rest. You know what I mean? So like that's important, right? To gravitate towards people that are like-minded as well.
Yeah, I agree for sure because, if you're around people who aren't like-minded and who don't care about falling into the temptation of lust, that's just going to make that risk bigger of you falling into it as well. Now, if you're hanging around people who are like that and, you could help them yourself by them seeing you not falling into that temptation no more and becoming a changed man, then, that could be good as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's been times where like, I may be with some of my so-called friends or whatever, and I'm in a relationship and they'll talk about how bad some girl is that they see or whatever on Instagram or something like that. And I don't even make no comments. And they be like, man, you lame. Like, I'm like, I mean, hey, I wouldn't want my girl to be looking at another man who she thought she was attractive and talk about him to her friends. So I just zip it.
Yeah.
I don't want nothing to come to fruition.
Yeah, facts. And you mentioned like the power of the tongue, right? How powerful that is. As a man, how important is it to watch the way you talk to yourself? Because I read one time, it's like there's a certain part of your brain that when you say something, it can't tell whether you're joking or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So how important is it to speak light and truth into yourself as a man? And not on a like self-spiritual way, right?
Yeah.
But accepting, like meditating on God's word and letting that sink into your identity.
Yeah, I mean, that's very important. And in the beginning, it could be difficult to get used to for yourself because especially when I was going through my depression, not even talking about lust, just with things I was dealing with in myself, didn't have nothing to do with nobody else. If my day was going good, I'd be like, man, what bad is finna happen?
Because
I
it's
know
too good.
Yeah. Like it could be the smallest. It could be, I don't know. I got a good paycheck at work or something. And I'm like, all right, something bad's finna happen. You know what I mean? It could be. Yeah. I was just always in that mindset of no matter how good the day was going, I just always knew something bad was gonna come up.
Wow.
And I would speak it out loud, like, all right, even if I'm by myself, just in the room, all right, what's finna happen? This is going too good. What bad is fixing to come up today?
Yeah.
And so I just, hearing my pastor now talk about life being, or the power being in the tongue and stuff, I'm like, you know what? That really helped me not think that bad was always going to come if something good was coming, because I would be expecting it. And so with me expecting it, I wouldn't be focused on keeping that good growing for the rest of that day. I'd be focused on preparing myself for the bad that's going to come. And so, yeah, that was big.
A big component of being a man of God is integrity, right? So I want to dive deep into that topic of like, what does it mean to carry yourself with integrity? People think honesty is, okay, I'm just telling the truth, right? But also I feel like honesty and integrity, it also has a component to where it shows how you carry yourself. Are you manipulating the others to get to where you want to be? That's not being integrity. You know what I mean? Or just like overall, like when people think of Garrett Owen or people think of Devin Lamb, how do they remember you? Do they remember you as, okay, that person always had my best interest? You know what I mean? How important is it, and what is your definition of integrity as a man?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. One thing you just said is how are people going to remember yourself or whatever. Um, and so with me, I do feel like even when I was going through my funk, people were explaining to me how appreciative of me they are.
Yeah.
And so that was really big and with integrity and just being honest with them, and as far as me having integrity, I was able to, no matter what I was going through, I've always been the type of person that want to be there for other people. Um, and so I always kept that integrity of not changing that mindset, even though I may be going through something terrible for the time being, or terrible that day when I'm helping somebody else.
Right.
And so just being able to stand on your ground, which I feel like is big as for integrity, in a selfish but good way, is just being able to stand your ground, fight for what you believe. Don't switch up just because you're trying to fit in with somebody else.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, don't switch up somebody else to try and get them to fit in with you, like what you were just saying.
Yeah.
You can, with the way you are, you can help them. Whether it could be whether you're helping them get some more of the positive qualities that you may feel like you have yourself, or just helping them grow in whichever way they are, whichever kind of man or woman that they are.
When you were talking about that tough season that you were going through, it was a kind of like you were expecting the worst, but also it's like you didn't really know which way to go, right? And a lot of times we find ourselves as men, as women, right? We find ourselves in valleys, right? Mountains and valleys, that's just a part of life. You're going to go through them. It's like as soon as you get on one mountain, the valley's coming. You know what I mean? And when you think about it, we pray to God, like, make me more like Christ, right? But then he puts us in situations where, we have to act out our faith, and we're just like, God, why am I in this? You know what I mean? And I think it's important to know that everything has its purpose in your life.
Right.
Literally everything. It can be the worst of days or it can be the best of days, but everything is connected. The Bible says everything works for our good, right? Everything. It doesn't say every good thing works for our good. It's everything, right? So I think it's important to know that whatever you're going through, whatever you find yourself in a valley or you just don't know a way out, realize that God knows the way. He's planned this out way before we even could breathe, could talk, you know what I mean, could walk. And I think that's important. So I want to touch up on the component of discipline, right? Being disciplined as a man. And it kind of, I'll say it goes hand in hand with integrity, but it's a little different in the fact of celebrating the invisible wins, as my pastor said. Things that may not show up on the outside, but at the end of the day, man, this is what I was praying to God about, and he helped me in this instance. And that's ultimately what flows through our heart and allows us to change our actions. So talk about how the invisible wins in your life has been important to you.
The invisible wins have been much bigger, and I'm much more thankful for the invisible wins than the seeable wins, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Because them invisible wins are wins that really you only know about unless you share it with other people. But even when you do that, they don't have that true feeling of what it's like.
Yeah.
For example, what is it, 2024? 2022, it started with me. Actually, that's when I started going to my church that I'm going to. Before that, I didn't go for 15 years to church. It was ever since my parents got divorced. I started going in 2022. About midway through 2022, my marriage started going downhill. And then towards the end of 2022, my grandmother, who I was real close with, unexpectedly got sick and died within a few days of us finding out she was sick. And so, but going through all that, I'll get on how it's an invisible win, but going through all that, I never questioned God, why? Like, why am I going through this when I'm going to church, I'm trying to grow my relationship closer to you? Why are all these bad things happening to me? Even so, because in the long run, like if I just look back now, like we'll start with going through the divorce and stuff. I don't as bad as it may sound, I don't regret going through the divorce. Obviously, God hates divorce. You know, when it says in the Bible, when you get married, you become one. And so that the toughest part of me going through that divorce was, is God gonna be mad at me? You know what I mean? But as crazy as often may seem to that outside world, like I actually got comfortable with knowing that God is gonna respect my decision for going forth with this divorce, because I prayed. I was asking Him for direction. I started off asking Him, fix it, and then it got to where I'm just gonna give it to you. If you better the relationship, cool. If not, hey, it is what it is. I believe that you got something brighter in store for me in my future. So that helped me grow closer to God, because it was just eye opener, because it was unexpected for me to feel so bigger on my faith after going through that divorce. And then with my grandma passing away, I'd never ever talked to her before she passed away about God or if she believed. We never talked about our faith. I never prayed for her. But I remember she was in the hospital before they sent her home to be on hospice. And I just asked her, I was like, Nana, can I pray for you? She was like, yeah. So I prayed for her. And then, so I feel like if she wasn't, of course I wish my grandmother was still here. But the inner victory with that was, I feel like if that wasn't the moment when it was time for God to call her home, I may have not ever prayed for her.
Wow.
And so praying for her in that moment made me realize that I know where she's going when she's leaving Earth. I know she's going to heaven and be with God. I just had that feeling, because like I said, we never talked about faith, never talked about God. And when I asked her, when she said yes, I could pray for her, she didn't just sit there and close her eyes. Like, you could tell she was really listening to my prayer and was really in it. And it made me feel like, so that was probably the biggest, honestly, the inner victory of my life wasn't losing my grandma, but knowing where she was going when I was in the process of losing her. And that could be big for somebody to admit. But yeah, that was probably the biggest inner victory of my life.
Man, that's powerful, bro. I want to ask you, what is your favorite Bible verse?
So I got two. I actually brought the Bible with me so I could, because I have them bookmarked in here. The first one is Psalms 27:1. A lot of people know, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Man, going through my depression and stuff, like, it got to a point to where, even to this day, I still struggle with fear. Not fear like, oh, I'm scared. You know what I mean? Just fear of my future, because of still holding on to my past hurt. So letting my past hurt cause fear for my future. And even then, like, shoot, I'm in a relationship now. One of the struggles that I have in this relationship is me being fearful that I may get hurt again if I get too close. So I may she may ask me a question and I may do a stupid lie because I'm afraid we're going to get into it. But then come to find out, I've realized, shoot, me lying is just going to make it worse. But, you know, I described to her, like, it's that fear, just the fear of worry of getting into it or getting too close. And even out of a relationship, like, whether I've just always let fear dictate my life. And so this verse is big because it makes me realize, like, whatever you may be fearful of, or just give it to God and he'll be in control of it.
Yeah.
And then the second one is 2 Corinthians 12, and that's 7 through 10. I'll read it real quick. It says, to keep me from becoming conceited because of these surpassingly great revelations, there has given me a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses and insults and hardships and persecutions and difficulties, for when I am weak, then I am strong. And that's big. That goes back to where, like, I felt like I was so weak, you know, while I was going through depression, going through divorce, going through losing my grandmother. I forgot to mention my dad unexpectedly was in the hospital. His kidneys was failing. So going through all that, I felt like on the inside I was just weak, just getting beat up all the time, beat up. But because of those inner victories, like you were asking about, it made me feel much more stronger as a person in general than I was before. And that's help me help other people.
Yeah.
Like the guy I told you about who texted me the next morning after hanging out with him. So, yeah, like I said, those inner victories are way much more important and better than the outer victories.
What advice, it can be any avenue, what advice would you give younger men in this generation?
Well, first I would say find what you like and somehow interpret God into whatever that is and build your relationship closer to him. Secondly, the quote is, tough times don't last, tough people do. And that was something I struggled with when I was going through my dark seasons was, I didn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. I didn't know, I was going through a tough time. I didn't know I didn't know that it wasn't going to last. I didn't know that it was going to get all better and stuff. Because I was just so focused on what I was going through. I was so focused on being not a negative person as far as, being rude and difficult with other people, but to myself. Because you can't, if you're fake around other people, it may seem good in the beginning, but it'll come down, it'll tumble down. And so, just realize tough times don't last, tough people do. And how I incorporate God into that is me going through a tough time. And I see now he pulled me out of that tough time. So that tough time didn't last, and he made me tougher going through it. So tough people do.
Going into something new, you didn't know what was on the other side. And there's an analogy of like, if you think of a spring flowing through a desert, right? Desert, think the driest land has no water, but a spring flows through it. Well, if you walk through it, initially there's mud. It's muddy. It's not perfect, right? That's the same as life. Like whenever something new is springing forth and God is trying to do something new in you, it's going to be muddy at first, but keep the course, keep the distance, then you'll find the spring. What is on the other side of taking that step towards Jesus as a man, right? Many men, they fear there's some things that I know I'm going to have to leave behind, whether it's drugs, whether it's women, right?
Money.
But how would you encourage them of like, man, there's so much more. Many people think like when you walk with Christ, you live just according to a set of rules, right? And they feel restrained.
And you trying to live this perfect life.
Exactly. But not knowing that like the boundness and slavery is in sin, right? What you think is freedom is actually slavery, right? But then on the other side, when you come to Christ, there's actually so much more freedom because it's like you're not a slave to your flesh anymore, right? How would you describe being on the other side of like, man, just give it to God as a man?
Shoot, paradise. That's how I would describe it.
Man.
It's just one word.
Yeah.
Paradise. And the reason I say that is because before I started focus on growing my relationship with God, I was just focused on like the earthly things. What would so and so think? How can I please so and so? And then I turned my focus on building my relationship closer to God and made it more so not what so think, what would God think? And that's another reason why kind of helped me, get through lust and temptation. And I was never really a big like drinker or nothing like that, but I would socially drink. I would smoke weed every now and then. And but then I stopped all that, and because I changed my mindset of what would God think if he was physically right here, I could see him and sitting next to me, what would he think if he just. So in the process of that, you really got to humble yourself. I feel like you got to humble yourself when you're in the process of building your relationship closer to God. And in the process on the other side, you'll realize like, man, like you'll just have a good feeling about yourself, seeing that you were able to pull yourself out of that sin that you were dealing with, or pulling yourself out of that life that you were in. Because like I said, on the other side, it's like paradise compared to what's on the earth. Granted, I'm still on the earth currently, but that relationship with God makes you makes you appreciate life more in general within yourself. To where it makes your earthly wonders and wants better. Actions speak louder than words. It's easy to say this, but I could be the richest man on the planet right now, and if in doing so I would have to lose the smallest amount of bond that I have with God, I would not accept a dime from that money. Just because, living on earth and all these earthly temptations and wants are all temporary compared to salvation. Once God calls you home. So
one word, you get one word, G. One word to describe being a man.
I would say one word of being a man. I would say leader. And the reason why I say that is because I don't mean like a leader as in people listen to me, do what I say. I mean a leader to where, because like I said, I've always been, even as a little kid, I've always been big on helping people, whether they were older or younger than me. And so as far as being a leader, one, I want to be a follower of Christ. And in doing so, I can help be the leader that I need to be to help other people become a follower in Christ and not of myself. And then I don't have kids yet, but eventually when I do want kids. I want to be a good leader for them, whether it's financial leader, obviously to support my family, but most importantly, I want to be like a spiritual leader. And so, because I want to lead them to Christ, I wouldn't want to die and go to heaven and not know where my kids are going. So I want to lead them. I want to be that leader for my kids and just really, everybody close to me. I want to be a good leader. When I leave this earth, I want them to be like, you know what, he was a good leader, and he helped me lead me in ways that bettered my life. And like that thing you posted on your story last night, you said something like, the best feeling will be when you get to heaven and see somebody and they come up to you and be like, basically, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you leading me to Jesus. That's what I mean by being a leader. So.
Turn on the lamp, I don't go postal till God give his stamp. We going global, I'm in with the champs. I sit at the Oval, they told me I can't. Turn on the lamp, I don't go postal till